Imagine writing like 867 really detailed, totally public logs just about your backyard garden.
Yeah, that's a lot of gardening.
Right. But now imagine doing the exact same thing for a notoriously complex programming language, like Haskell.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then you do it again for photography and diet and artificial intelligence and, keeping fish.
It's just an unbelievable amount of output.
It really is. Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. Today, we're turning our focus to this uniquely dense, hyper-documented corner of the internet. We're looking at the personal journal of a guy who calls himself an old software plumber. His name is Qian Meng.
And it's just such a remarkable digital space. For this deep dive, we're looking specifically at a post he published on his site, qianmeng.org. This was on April 14th, 2026.
Right, the fishkeeping one.
Exactly. The title is Notes on Fishkeeping, Part 232, Managing the Bioload with Filters.
Part 232, just incredible.
I know, right? But, our mission here goes way beyond just learning how to clear up cloudy aquarium water for your fish.
Oh, totally. We're really looking at the structural metadata of his site, the sheer volume of the writing. It's really a masterclass in systems thinking, right?
Yeah, exactly. We want to explore how a highly analytical mind translates, like a digital software philosophy, into the chaotic physical world. And ultimately, how his approach might actually change the way you tackle your own frustrating projects.
Right, because to understand how he fixes a literal biological mess in a fish tank, you have to understand his background. In his About section, he explicitly states that his journal is a record of his tinkering with floss.
Floss. Free, Libre, and open source software.
Exactly. And that background as a software developer completely defines his approach to, learning anything.
It really does, because open source software development operates on a very specific set of principles,
Like opposed to closed source development.
Right. In closed source, a company might build this massive, complex piece of software in complete secret for years, and they try to release this perfect, finished product.
Which, obviously, rarely happens.
Exactly. But in the Floss community, the philosophy is almost entirely inverted. You build a minimal version, you release it into the wild immediately, you observe how it breaks, and then you just continuously release small updates.
They call them commits, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Commits. You don't hide your failures. You document them openly so the whole community can learn.
And I was looking through the archive sidebar of his site, which goes all the way back to 2011, by the way, and that philosophy is just so visible in his staggering output.
The numbers are crazy.
Yeah, so in 2024, he published 732 posts.
Wow.
In 2025, 730 posts. And by mid-April of 2026, when this specific fishkeeping note was published, he was already at 315 posts for the year.
So he's averaging, 2 detailed logs a day?
Every single day, spanning this incredibly wide range of disciplines. But I have to ask, when I see Notes on Gardening, Part 867, I immediately think of information overload.
Oh, sure. I mean, most people would.
Like, how does anyone keep track of all that data? I feel like tracking every minor detail of a hobby would just paralyze you.
Yeah. But that's where the software log mentality changes the utility of the writing. When a person operates at that kind of volume, the concept of perfectionism just has to go out the window.
So he's not trying to write a polished essay every time.
No, not at all. It's a personal commit to his daily log. He observes something in the garden, or he encounters a bug in some Python code, or he notices his fish are acting weird. He just documents what happened, notes his thoughts, and moves on.
He's not trying to hold all 867 parts in his active memory.
Exactly. He's building a searchable database of his own lived experience. And when you treat your daily observations like software commits, you dramatically lower the stakes of learning.
Right. A failure isn't a reason to quit. It's just a data point.
Yeah, and he even has this standard open source disclaimer on his site. It says the content is for informational purposes only, and he accepts no liability for the outcomes.
Oh, I love that. It's like software provided as is. Try this in your garden at your own risk. But, applying that low-stakes mindset to something abstract like writing code makes perfect sense. The code doesn't care if you walk away for a week.
Right, but living organisms definitely do.
Exactly. The physical environment is unforgiving. Which brings us to part 232 of his fishkeeping notes. He is facing a very messy physical bug in his living room.
The cichlid dilemma.
Yes. So let's lay out the variables here for you. He's managing 2 separate aquarium tanks, and each tank has a population of golden mabuna.
The scientific name is Melanochromis auratus for the biology nerds out there.
Right, they're a type of African cichlid, and anyone who has spent even 5 minutes in the aquarium hobby knows that cichlids are, they're incredibly active, super aggressive, and ravenous eaters.
Which means their output is equally massive. The text actually notes that because of the sheer number of fish, the tanks have an incredibly high bioload.
Bioload, that's such a critical term here.
It is. Basically, it refers to the total biological burden placed on the closed ecosystem of the tank. Every living thing in there produces waste. Right.
The fish are producing ammonia through their gills and biological waste, plus uneaten food, rotting plant matter.
Exactly. And in nature, like in a lake, that waste is diluted by millions of gallons of water. It's processed by massive natural ecosystems.
But in a 30-gallon glass box in your house, that high bioload has nowhere to go.
Right. So if the ecosystem can't process the waste fast enough, the environment just becomes toxic.
Yeah.
And the water quality visibly degrades. It gets super cloudy.
So to try and keep these fish alive in this rapidly degrading environment, Qianmeng's initial setup relied heavily on air stones.
Which, initially seems logical. Cichlids are super active, so they need a ton of oxygen.
Right, but the solution actually created this cascading failure in the local ecosystem. The air stones pumped in the oxygen they needed, but the bubbling action was so aggressive it kicked up the substrate.
The sand and gravel at the bottom of the tank.
Yeah, exactly. All that debris just entered the water column and turned everything cloudy.
And it wasn't just messing up the bottom of the tank either. The text talks about how the surface turbulence from those bubbles was violently thrashing the duckweed.
The little floating plants at the top.
Yeah, these delicate plants resting on the water's surface. So the intervention, the air stone, is effectively destroying the physical layout at the bottom and physically battering the biological plant life at the top.
I kept trying to visualize this while reading it. The closest parallel I can think of is like building a custom PC.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
Imagine you notice your computer's processor is running way too hot. So you install this massive industrial-grade 10,000 RPM cooling fan right inside the case.
I mean, that would cool it down.
It totally solves the temperature problem. It's pulling in huge amounts of dust, rattling your hard drives, and it sounds like a literal jet engine in your office.
Right, yeah. A brute force mechanical fix for one problem totally destabilizes the rest of the system. That tension between biological needs and mechanical solutions is a classic hallmark of complex systems architecture. The air stone is a blunt instrument. It forces a mechanical action into a really delicate biological balance.
Because changing one variable in a closed system forces everything else to react.
Right. By solving the oxygen deficit, he inadvertently crashed the water clarity and the plant health.
Yeah.
The system needs something more sophisticated. It needs a background process.
So our software plumber needs a patch. And according to his log, the solution is to finally install a filter.
Yep.
But here's the thing. He explicitly notes in the post that he had a collection of unused filters just sitting in his possession. He pulls one out of storage. I really have to push back on this. If you own the equipment and you know you have high bioload fish, why leave the gear in the closet? My instinct would be to plug in the biggest, most expensive filter on day one to prevent the problem entirely.
Yeah, the instinct to over-engineer from day one is so common. But if you look at it from the perspective of a seasoned systems manager, introducing complexity before it is strictly required is a huge mistake.
Really? How so?
Well, in systems architecture, every new component you add is a new potential point of failure. A mechanical filter has impellers that can jam. It has intake tubes that get clogged. It draws electrical power.
Oh, I see. It requires routine maintenance.
Right. In the software world, they call this technical debt.
So you're saying he intentionally held back to avoid creating unnecessary work for himself?
Exactly. He exercised the discipline of minimal intervention. If the natural system could handle the bioload on its own, adding a mechanical filter just introduces noise and maintenance debt.
He let it ride until it broke.
He allowed the natural system to run its course until the bioload visibly tipped the scales. That proved that intervention was actually necessary.
That makes the timing deliberate, not neglectful. I love that. And when he does intervene, his method is purely analytical. Remember, he has 2 tanks suffering from the exact same cloudy water issue.
Right. 2 identical problems.
But he doesn't overhaul both systems. The text says he installs the filter in just one of the 2 tanks. He's running a live A/B test in his living room.
It's brilliant. He's deploying the patch to a single server to isolate the variable.
Because if he did both at once...
Right. If he installed filters in both tanks and the fish suddenly got sick, or the water chemistry crashed. He'd have too many confounding variables.
Was it the filter? Was it the tap water?
Was it bad fish food? By isolating the new mechanical variable to tank 1, he uses tank 2 as a control group.
And the log notes that within a few days of this test, the filter pulled the debris from the water column and totally cleared up the cloudy water. But, the entry kind of simplifies what the filter is actually doing.
Oh, definitely.
It treats the filter like an underwater vacuum cleaner, just sucking up the dirt. But in a high bioload cichlid tank, a filter is doing way more than just sweeping the floor.
Yeah, the mechanical filtration, just trapping physical dirt in a sponge, that's only the first stage. The real power of an aquarium filter is biological.
Right, the invisible engine.
Exactly. It serves as a housing unit for the nitrogen cycle. So that toxic ammonia we talked about earlier, a mature filter actually cultivates colonies of beneficial bacteria.
It's basically server space for bacteria.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. The first type of bacteria eats the toxic ammonia and converts it into nitrite. Then a second colony eats the nitrite and converts it into nitrate, which is way less toxic.
And then you just remove the nitrates with regular water changes, or the plants absorb it?
Yep. Returning to our software analogy, that nitrogen cycle is the ultimate background process. Meng isn't just vacuuming. He's upgrading the ecosystem's processing power to handle the data load of the fish waste.
And this upgrade quietly resolves that unresolved subplot we mentioned. The battered duckweed. Oh, right. The floating plants.
Because we established the air stone was violently agitating the surface. But a proper filter completely changes the flow dynamics.
Yeah.
It takes water in and pushes it out through a directional output.
So it creates a steady horizontal current.
Exactly, instead of a chaotic vertical column of bubbles.
Which means you still get the surface agitation you need for gas exchange, putting oxygen into the water, but without the localized violence.
So the duckweed is safe, the substrate stays on the bottom, the oxygen deficit is fixed, and the biological toxicity is handled, all from one thoughtful intervention.
And you really see his restraint again in the final lines of the post.
Oh, right, because even after tank 1 clears up and stabilizes, he doesn't immediately rush to patch tank 2.
Right. He writes, depending on how the water quality holds up, I'll explore using other unused filters for the second tank.
He's actually waiting to make sure the patch is totally stable over time before rolling it out across his whole network.
It's just the scientific method executed with immense patience. The discipline required to just sit on your hands and wait, rather than tweaking every single knob the moment you see an improvement. It's incredibly rare.
It really is.
And I think the wisdom we're extracting from Meng's digital journal translates directly to almost any chaotic project you might be facing in your own life.
Oh, the methodology is totally universal. Like, first, you just observe carefully without an immediate reaction. When a system breaks, identify the exact mechanism of the failure.
Right. And second, document the process meticulously. Remember, a failed attempt isn't a reflection of your competence. It's just a vital piece of data for your personal log.
And third, practice minimal intervention. Don't go out and buy the most complicated gear on day 1. Let the system run until it demands a solution. You want to avoid that unnecessary technical debt.
Finally, when you do act, isolate your variables, change one thing at a time, test the results, and just wait.
Adopting that mindset, the software plumber mindset, it really removes the emotional weight from learning.
It really does. When you expect a linear path to mastery, every obstacle feels like a massive personal defeat.
But when you expect a messy reality, obstacles are just bugs waiting for a documented patch.
That reframing changes everything. So, as you go about your week, think about an area of your life that feels overwhelming right now. Maybe it's a professional project or a new skill you're trying to learn, or even just a routine that keeps breaking down.
Yeah.
If you were to open a blank document today and write part 1 of your public open source journal about that specific chaos, what small isolated variable would you change first to clear the waters? And if you simply committed to documenting those tiny tweaks day after day without any judgment, where might your understanding of that system be by part 867?